Fantrax Fantasy Football Mailbag episode heading into Week 12. How do we feel about Kyren coming back? He's going against the last team he played, against where he had 150 yards and a touchdown, but he's coming off IR. Should I be cautious? Great matchup for Kyren. The Cardinals allow the third most fantasy points per game to running backs and the seventh most rushing yards per game this season. He missed 4 games due to an injury. He's back, and just like said above, the last game he played was against the Cardinals. 20 rushing attempts for 158 and a touchdown, 21.8 fantasy points as the running back 3 that week. Kyren's finished as a top 10 running back in 4 of his 6 appearances this season, 2 games over 100 yards rushing and 5 total touchdowns. So returning against the team he already tore up is awesome, right? But there is hesitation, and I totally get that because he is coming off of the IR. Is he going to be on a snap count? The reason I am not concerned is because the Rams waived Darrell Henderson, who actually looked pretty decent for them. They said, thanks a lot for filling in, but see you later. And I think that's reassuring for Kyren Williams because I feel like if he was going to be on this big snap count or really limited in his return, they would have eased him back in and maybe kept Darrell Henderson for another week or two. But the fact that they're letting Darrell Henderson walk upon his return, I think says that he's good to go. Will firing Canada be plus or minus or neutral for Pickens and Deontay? So the Steelers fired their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, this week. And I think we're all hoping for better things out of this Pittsburgh offense. Maybe just more consistency for a lot of the guys that we roster for fantasy football. This is via Jeff Kerr in a CBS article, but Pittsburgh failed to reach 400-plus total yards in 58 consecutive games, which is the second longest such streak in the NFL under Matt Canada. And maybe there's a lot to point at the offensive coordinator. Not sure if it's a scapegoat, but he could be a piece of the reason this offense has not been super great. But we have to look at Kenny Pickett. Via Player Profiler, Kenny Pickett this season ranks number 30 in yards per attempt, number 32 in true completion percentage, number 18 in deep ball completion percentage, number 4 in play action completion percentage. Pretty good for that one. Number 32 in clean pocket completion percentage, number 27 in true passer rating. He's throwing a 60.5 completion percentage this year, 28.1 passing attempts per game, but only 172.2 passing yards per game. 6 touchdowns. Interesting, too, is that he has 46 rushing yards in 10 games, but last year in 13 games, he had 237. So I think the goal of whoever's up next as the offensive coordinator is to find ways to make Kenny Pickett successful. Maybe that means drawing up some plays for him to run more. Solid in his completion percentage via play action, and with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris looking better, maybe there's more plays drawn up for that. I think a faster-paced offense would probably just make sense. Get the ball out of his hands in an efficient way. More quick plays to Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth, with George Pickens keeping defenses honest down the field. I mean, what do I know? But I'm just thinking that you have to find ways to make Kenny Pickett successful because he has been terribly, terribly inefficient, which could be due to the play calling, but also has a lot to do with Kenny Pickett. Jake Browning or DTR rest of season for Superflex redraft. So Jake Browning is taking over for Joe Burrow, who will be out for the season. He threw 8 for 14 last week for 68 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 4 times for 40 yards. And this came after just 1 NFL attempted pass before this. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is filling in for Deshaun Watson, also out for the season. He threw 19 for 36 for 121 passing yards and 3 interceptions in week 4. Then last week, 23 for 43 for 165 and an interception. Both games he rushed for 20-ish yards. I think you can say that DTR has the solid O-line, but Browning with a fully healthy cast of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon has a better set of weapons. I think we've also seen pretty bad flashes out of DTR so far in those 2 games when it comes to being inefficient with his completions and turning over the ball. So I think I'm going to give Browning a shot over DTR here. I'm working at multiple trades, but overall, I'm giving away Jacobs, Devontae, Waddle, Raji Rice, Noah Brown, and I'm getting Diggs, Brees, Hollywood, and Khalil Herbert. Is that good? So I think you got to break this one down into pieces a little bit. So I would take Diggs over Devontae Adams individually. I'd take Diggs over Waddle individually. I'd take Brees over Jacobs, but I think it's fairly close for that one. Like, just saying that, I'm going back and forth because Jacobs leads running backs, or he did coming into week 11 in total touches. So that one's close to me, actually. I would also take Hollywood Brown over Raji Rice and Noah Brown individually. I do think that his connection we saw last season with Kyler Murray is going to be reestablished at some point. Khalil Herbert, I'd take over Noah Brown, I guess, here. Personally, I think I try to find a way to take out Waddle from this trade. I try to swap him with somebody, maybe not, a total bench guy, but somebody that maybe doesn't have the upside and is not in such a good offense as Jalen Waddle. I can make some sense of the trade. I just think that if we're weighing things out with Jacobs and Brees being close, Diggs being above Devontae, Herbert is a decent option. I don't know. I think just that Waddle piece is kind of making it uneasy for me a little bit here. So I think I just swap out that for somebody not, completely at a different value, but somebody a little bit less of a value. Chris here, first time, long time with a cluster that is the wide receiver room in Green Bay. Which is the one to roster rest of season, and can you rank them? Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed. I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Thanks. So maybe hot take here, but I want the second round 2023 rookie in Jaden Reed over the rest of these guys. He caught all 5 targets for 84 yards and a touchdown in week 10. Caught 4 of his 6 targets for 46 yards and rushed 3 times for 46 yards and a touchdown in week 11. 19.4 and 19.2 fantasy points the last 2 weeks, leading the wide receiver room in these games for fantasy football. Back-to-back games of 19-ish fantasy points, and he scored 19-ish fantasy points 3 times this season. Reed's had a fairly consistent role. Maybe the targets have kind of fluctuated, but he's been important to Green Bay. In another hot take, I just think he's so much better of a talent than anybody else listed right here. Does he necessarily have the upside Christian Watson did in his rookie season? Probably not. But Christian Watson, personally, is not a guy I have a ton of faith in right now. He came into the league with a pretty mediocre to poor prospect profile in college. He's a great athlete, right, who I think needs to develop a lot more. Romeo Doubs has been, fairly good this season. I think a lot of his good weeks are touchdown dependent. Dontavian Wicks has trended up in some usage, but we haven't really seen too much out of him. So part of me wants to say Doubs over Christian Watson here, but I think just knowing what we saw last year as a rookie, we're just hoping that we see some sort of flash of rookie Christian Watson. But it's very obvious that Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love are 2 different quarterbacks. So I think I'm going to go Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks in that order. Thanks for checking out the episode. Hopefully you lasted this long. Make sure you are following the Fantrax socials on all platforms to help you guys play to win.